ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk and lay down my thoughts about Classic. It's taken me a few days to sort of like compress it into some reasonable way of thinking about this, because in a week where I defeated Mythic Una in the highest world kill I've had since Cataclysm, it was a joy because it also meant I could go back and play Classic without having to think about raiding on BFA, which is just obscene. It's crazy how much I've had to pull myself away from Classic only to be thinking while I'm doing other things, when can I log back in? Even after hitting the level cap, the current level cap on Classic is 30. It hasn't mattered a bit. It's actually been a blessing. It's been a blessing to be able to say, okay, the leveling bit's done. Now I can focus on all these other things that I want to get done before the level cap raises. It's like a breath of fresh air to like, okay, I have so much more to do with this character that I can go and do all this other stuff without fear of falling behind or not being up to date with anybody. It's been such a bizarre experience. And why is it so different and to the retail? And no one's more surprised than me. No one is more surprised than me because, as you guys know, in every Classic podcast I did with S-Fan and stuff, and every time I was asked about Classic, my stance was always pretty much the same. I'm very, very happy that the guys who fought for Classic, who were fighting on the private servers through all the nostalgia stuff, and onto the Elysium stuff, I was so happy that those guys were getting what they wanted. But I didn't think it was for me. And that caused a lot of outrage from people who really wanted me to be either on the far side of either argument. You were either in full support of Classic or you were dead against it. I wasn't either way. I considered it a different game, which is what I told many people. It's no different to me than people wanting to play Final Fantasy or ESO or any of that stuff. They just want to play a different game. That's totally understandable. But for me, I've lived through Classic. I was there from the day one. I was in the beta. I played it all the way through, and I was done with that journey as far as I was concerned. Like, Preach의 3 weeks ago was done with that journey. And Blizzard asked me about Classic several times over the last couple of months. And obviously, they knew the beta was coming. I didn't. But I kept getting sort of random questions from Blizzard about Classic. Like, what is it you're going to test in Classic? What do you think about Classic? What is it you're looking forward to about Classic? And my answer was always pretty much the same thing. I'm not interested in the content. This is me of 3 weeks ago. I'm not interested in the content. I've done Molten Core and all the way through Nax. I've done with that stuff. That's not what I'm interested in. What I am interested in is the community aspect of it. Like, that's the stuff I really want to experience again. Because, and I said this to him, I was like, your phasing technology is incredible. It's really, really good technology. It's terrible for an MMO. It's absolutely awful, and it really has pulled it out. And I really don't like the way you fill areas with NPCs to give it some sort of artificial sense of life, when in many ways, because of phasing, I might be surrounded by like 60 or 70 players, but I would never know it in order to maintain a smooth operation of the game. So that was what I was really interested in. And then I got to play it, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, man, this is the game I fell in love with all those years ago. And it's the reason, like, 15 years later, obviously I didn't start making content back then, but it's the reason 15 years later, I'm sat here having this conversation. It's because of this. This is what sucked me in. And many of you know, when I first saw World of Warcraft and my friends started getting the beta, I was part of a different MMO, much more hardcore PvP-based MMO. It looked lame. It looked so lame. I'm not into fairies and shit and elves. So when the guys were like, oh, we're running through Teldrassil and there's all fairies and shit falling from the floor, I was like, that's so lame. I don't want any part of that. And then I played it and I was like, okay, well, this is what we're playing now. And I fell in love with it. So what is it? And the big discussion I'm sure many of you have, and I have had this that I'm about to tell you with so many of my friends, is when you try and describe what it is you love about it, it sounds awful. It sounds like the absolute worst thing in the world. Because you say things like, they can watch the stream and they can see people playing, they're like, okay, so you went out and you did, like, you went to a zone, you got like 3 quests. One of them was a red quest, which I'm going to come back to, by the way. And it was collect 10 fucking boar tails or something. And you spent 2 hours doing that because the drop rate was so bad. And during that, you were just like auto-attacking, applying rend, you know, keeping shouts up. You did like 5 buttons in that 2-hour period. And then eventually you got them and went back. And it sounds awful. It's like, that's, if you put it that way, it's against how you spin it. And context is absolutely everything. If you spin it that way, yeah, it sounds terrible. But I had the best time. I had the absolute best time. And a lot of it comes back to the complaints I've had about BFA, certainly in BFA, but I've had this about the game for a long time, is that in retail WoW, I feel like an absolute genocidal maniac. I feel like I should be locked up and put away. And why? Because no matter where I travel in that game, I eradicate everything. All life dies before my feet. Everything just dies. No matter what character I'm playing, doesn't matter what gear level I'm playing, I am never, ever not God in the game. And it bothers me. It bothers me a lot because I play a lot of different games. As maybe some of you who watch YouTube think I just play World of Warcraft. I don't, actually. I play a huge variety of games, from normal mode, easy mode, and to extreme hard mode. I will go from a game like Sekiro and have the best time ever, and then we'll go and play Two Point Hospital Simulator, right? Or we'll play some story game and we'll play it on normal because that's what I feel is the appropriate level to play that game. It's not about being ultra hard mode all the time or ultra easy mode all the time. These sort of baskets people put themselves in. I move around and I drift from game to game depending on what I want to play. And when I'm playing an RPG, I need the RPG aspects. I need that. And I look at BFA now, especially after playing Classic and seeing how far we've come and almost this complete 180 as to how the game started compared to what it is now. And you really see how BFA is kind of an RPG simulator, sort of, where it's like, this is like it's almost like a parody of an RPG. It's like, well, it's got all these checkbox things that RPGs should have, but they're kind of meaningless and they kind of don't make any sense. And don't worry about it because you're the hero of every story. And you go back to a world where you are not the hero in any way, shape, or form. You are not the hero. And this world is out to kill you, and you will lose. And this is so important to me as a gamer. You will lose. And that's what's so vital about it. And that creates these environments that are so much more interesting. So let me take that tale of going getting the boar tails for 2 hours, and let me twist it into what actually happens there. The fact is, these low drop rates, which on live would be unacceptable. The fact that it'd take me 2 hours to do a single quest would be unacceptable in live WoW. But in classic WoW, what it allows is people to be out in a world that is considerably more dangerous. Now, this has also been misconstrued about hard. What is hard? And I see people trying to apply, again, a retail context to what is hard. Is it hard that I only have 4 spells to press? No. Is it hard that the enemies just have auto attack? No, we don't need to break everything down into like Siegecraft or Blackfuse style mechanics or Klaxi or Jaina, where there's just an endless stream of things that can happen to you and you have to react within milliseconds all the time. No, the difficulty comes from the fact that you will lose. It's as simple as that. You will lose. Pulling 2 mobs will get you killed, which means you have to be careful out there. Now, that sounds boring when you put it like that, right? 1 mob at a time, that sounds really boring. What it does, though, it creates an environment where there's danger. There's danger, and you need to be careful. And it also creates an environment where you're out there for a really long time, right? You're out in this world for a long time. Think about how much time you spend out in the open world doing something in an area right now. It's typically going to be world quests. You're likely to be there from anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 3 minutes if that happens to have a low drop rate, like it's Absorb Azerite or something like that, which is just tedious. And that's it. You can kind of go on to the next place, or you can return to the city where you're perfectly safe all the time. This time, though, you're out in a dangerous world for like 2 hours. You're not going to go back to town. You need to stay out in the open world. That also means other people have to be there as well, because they're going to be starting their quest or finishing up their quest. This puts a lot more people into an area regularly. And it's also a safer journey if you do it together. And that's what builds the community so much, is you're both 2, 3, 4, 5 of you, whatever it might be, are all doing the same thing. But it's dangerous, and you have to work together. You don't have to, but you both understand, know each other or not, friends or not, that working together towards this goal is a far better experience overall. It's a much safer journey, and you start helping each other. You start providing foods and buffs to each other. You start saving people when they're going to die. I can't think of a single time I've had to do that in years where I haven't teamed up with somebody out in the open world simply because it might get my quest done that little bit quicker and I can leave as quickly as possible. That's my mindset in retail. Out in Classic, Many times you stick around for a little bit longer to help that guy out because you know he's going to be in a really tough situation should you leave. And because you're out there in the open world and the quests are so few, and this is what helps as well, the quests are so few that you're probably going to be along the same path for the next little while. So you might finish off these bear tails, but then you say something like, do you have this one? Yeah, I have this one. Let's go. And that's what happens every single time. And it's just amazing. It's so much better to play that way because it's not about just the combat, like putting things into their own little boxes. Like, this is the combat, this is the quest system, this is this, which is how we have to look at retail. We have to look at it that way because everything is broken down into those components. Because we can't talk about the immersion of going into Vol'dun. It's like, where's the quest located? Where's the rare located? All right. And that's about it. But in Classic, it's like there's 2 or 3 quests here that will lead into something later, usually lead into some sort of end boss zone. And along the way, you pick up people who are along this journey. And what has happened every single time, I can't think of a time this has happened where I haven't had a decent play session in Classic, is eventually I've bumped into somebody who's doing something similar. And you'll see a /say pop up. It's like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And we'll say yes or no. Or it's like, do you need help? You know, this happens as a normal opener. And then you'll work out together. And then it's like, what else have you got? And then you'll work through that together. It's like, right, I've got to log off now. Cool, see you later. Next time you log on, you both probably progress to a point where you're in the next zone together. And you'll get a whisper from that person. Where are you up to now? What are you up to? And it's not just because I'm Preach, right? This is me whispering other people as well. I've done this. I've logged in. I was like, oh, where's that dude I was with yesterday? I wonder if he's still here. Wonder what if he's moved on. Or if I'm just going to go to a new zone. Maybe he wants to come with me. I've done that on stream. It's no lie. I've just looked at people. I've /who'd the server, see who's around, recognized people. Recognized people from past dungeons. Like, do you want to come along? Because, you know, that was cool. We did that dungeon together. I liked what you did there. We had a bit of fun. Do you want to come with me now? Let's make a group. And that's because we can't LFG. We can't LFD. I can't just join a queue. Now I've got to make my own groups. Right, okay. I'm going to look at the guys I've played with before and had a nice experience with and go with those guys. And it's just built up this story. And it really reinforces to me as to why I never fell in love with the Warcraft story. And even though I've tried to, I always remember in my head, like, I just never cared about this story at all. And the reason is, there is really no story. Like, when I started playing, there wasn't really a story. Like, each zone has a story. Sure, each zone has a story, and some of them I remember. I remember Misrael in Arathi. I remember little tales like that. But my stories are mine, and it's the lore of me. It's not the lore of the game. I didn't need spoon-feeding, or I didn't need a big tale to take me through what was happening in the game. The stories I walk away with not just one story, but like 2 or 3 stories after playing Classic. Each time I play. And sometimes those stories are incredibly epic, but even the ones that aren't incredibly epic are still really good. And along the way, it's just been getting to know people. What I did yesterday is I sent potions, mana potions, that I had picked up while I was questing to a different guy who was healing my dungeons a few days ago. I was like, I'll send them to that guy instead of just vendoring them, right? Because I know he can make use of them. And he then sent me a letter back. It's like, thanks. Like, that's the world. That's the world. And I miss it so fucking much. I really do miss it so fucking much. Because I haven't changed my thought process. Is that I would rather be playing retail. Like, I'm going to hit that point in Classic where I'm going to be making good friends. I'm going to be having great times. But it's still going to be a world I've done before. And it's made me so sad for retail that, like, I have to go so far out of my way to try and get a good experience. And that's what makes me really sad about it. If I want a really good adventure in BFA, I'm so limited that it basically comes down to Mythic rating. That's it. It comes down to Mythic rating because literally everything else to get the highest possible rewards or whatever is entirely puggable. It's entirely puggable. You only need a +10 Mythic, and that is puggable. It's totally puggable. And it's nameless and faceless and no communication or anything like that. And maybe it's the beta. People are being extra nice on the beta, but everything that I've experienced has brought up the memories that this is how it was when it wasn't a streamer thing, when it wasn't something that was a niche thing or a nostalgia-driven thing. This is how the game was for me originally. Like, that's what I've remembered. It's like, this is the stuff I used to do. Sending potions to people who I've done dungeons with, that was something I used to do. Like, it's not a case of this is like this little sandbox world that I'm living in. where it's just everyone's being nicey nice and it's because it's Preach. This is all stuff I did before my name mattered to anybody ever in the entire world. It didn't matter. This is all the things we used to do. And this is how I got into guilds and things. It's like eventually that guy who I sent those potions to or did those dungeons with eventually got into a guild. And he whispered me, he's like, yo, I've just got into a guild. Do you want me to see if I can get you in? And that's how it sort of develops and grows. But you're doing this with so many different people. You're doing this with people that you met in Alterac. These are the people you met in Hillsbrad. These are the people you met in Arathi or STV and you fought off at Nessingwary's camp together, or you got ganked together, or you had a quest to do together. It also, coming back to this danger element, it's actually been strange to me to see the game giving me quests and objectives that aren't immediately doable. I can't remember the last time in World of Warcraft the game gave me a challenge that wasn't immediately doable in terms of difficulty. So the big one right now on the beta is, of course, the Warrior Whirlwind Axe quest. They give you that quest at level 30. Yeah, it's realistically like a level 40 reward. It's around there, and will give you an awesome weapon, which will see you through till like 45 plus, right? Around 45 until you replace it. But they give it you at level 30. And they give you a piece of parchment telling you what you need to do for it. And they trust the player to decide how they tackle this challenge. They entrust the player to figure out, are you going to try this now? Because you can do this now. Because everyone's doing it on the beta. It is totally possible. And it happened back in Classic. Is people would organize teams to go and get this done. You can do that. Or you can be more solo with it. And you can do it over a period of the next 10 levels. You can kind of work your way through it and figure it out. And ultimately you'll get a great reward. But it's down to the player to choose their adventure. Here's the choice. Here's the objective. Is it possible to do this on your own right now? No, it's not. But here it is. And if you can figure it out and you can go on a journey or you can do something to sort this out, then you can do that. You can do that right now. And it will give you... And the reward for that will be a weapon that will deal incredible damage for the next 15 levels. That's the reward we're going to give you should you go out of your way and figure something else out. Or you can opt to do it a different way. You can take your time with it. You can work through it over a nice period of time, and then you've got one singular goal that you've been working to over, say, 10 levels, which will finally give you that big reward. And I can't remember the last time WoW gave the player that level of freedom to decide how they wanted to do things. I can't remember. I honestly cannot remember which expansion was the last time they were like, here's this super hard thing to do. You figure out how you do it. Right? You figure it out. We'll leave it up to you. It's pretty simple to do, but, you know, it's not doable by yourself right now. It's way bigger than you are. So deal with it. Okay. And if you do, we'll reward you appropriately for it. Which kind of brings us to the gearing thing. Gearing things is extraordinary. It's so ultra simple. Upgrades and items are stupidly rare. But goddamn do they feel good when you get them. Really good. I've been excited about greens. I've been so excited about greens. Like getting a really nice green with mail. It has to meet so many criteria. And this is the thing that I think retail has lacked for a few expansions now. Is it has to meet so many criteria to be awesome. And I showed this in the tanking video I did. Is there are lots of one-handed weapons out there. Some of them are strength. Some of them are agility. Blah, blah, blah. Swords, axes, maces. But I need not only that, I need that to be of a certain speed and a certain type in order to really fit my criteria, or it doesn't work. And get the same with the two-handers. They have to meet certain criteria in order to be attractive. And when you get that one, good God, does that feel fucking awesome. You feel really good when you see that item that is properly itemized. It's set up nicely. Even if it's braces, like upgrading braces from like a white item and then you see a green with some strength on it or some stamina and you're like, dude, those are fucking awesome. And the reason they're awesome is it's an immediately noticeable leap forward. It's immediately noticeable. You start surviving that little bit longer. You start seeing these crits go that little bit higher. And that's a big advantage of another complaint I've had about BFA. I mean, everything I've been arguing about with the BFA and Legion is all becoming back to me now as to why I find this stuff problematic. And again, it was highlighted in the tank video, is, yes, the gameplay is much slower, but the advantage is I know exactly what my character is doing. I know exactly what's happening. I know which, because there's white hits and there's yellow hits, right? And I can only do one ability per global to attack this enemy. I don't have procs and all this nonsense just constantly clobbering at targets, these random procs. And you guys should know how much issue I take with Blizzard just giving us items that do random amounts of damage and saying, well, technically your DPS did go up. It did, but it's nothing to do with me, and I can't tell it's happening. Whereas when you're playing Classic, I know every Sunder that's missed, hit, parried, dodged, blocked. I know every revenge that's worked that way. I know every single spell, whether I dodged. I know that if I see a dodger pop above that head, that I know my overpowers procs. I don't need a weak aura. I don't need fuck all. I know that that was my attack. I know that it dodged. And because it's very clear what's happening with my character, when I press a button, a clear and easy response to what happened to the enemy, whether I did damage or not, makes sense. And because there's so much fewer going on, but it's stuff I've done, right? There's so fewer attacks, but I know each and every one that's happened. I know when I see that big white hit, it's because my two-hander swung and hit it. I know when I see that yellow hit, it's because it's the button I just pressed. So if I press a heroic strike and I see that big yellow number pop up, I know that's my heroic strike. So I then noticeably see the gain that my character has made in terms of his damage from those braces, because I'll see a larger number appear when I pop that execute. That big yellow execute pops up, and now it's like doing 500 plus damage. It's like, whoa! Before it was doing like 4 something. Now we're over 500, and you're meeting these landmarks as you're moving up on your character. And then you get a new cape that does the same thing. And because it's so tactile in its responsiveness to what it is that I'm doing, it makes gear feel so much better. Overall, the whole package, getting it feels better, equipping it feels better, using it feels better, and then keeping it going also feels so much better. It does. A simpler system, like we've been asking for. I've been asking for a long time. Stop stacking us up with procs and fireworks. And I compared it to a little bit like Risk of Rain, where you can get so many automatic weaponry that you can stand still and all your automatic shit will just destroy things around you. And it's not that fun. It's not fun. It might look flashy and amazing and all this kind of stuff. It might look like an entire fireworks display shooting off, but it's nothing to do with me in any way. And now just having a very straight one-to-one tactile feedback over what happens compared to what I did. I know that when I go for a hamstring and I see dodge, I know I know that just from the yellow word that was my hamstring that dodged, right? And if I compare it to live, I don't know. If I fire some attacks at an enemy, and any character I have, I see a whole slew of numbers pop up from all difference, from thousands to hundreds and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't really know what's doing that damage. I have no idea. I have no idea what's doing that damage. And it really highlights how problematic that is in terms of creating a good gameplay experience, because you need to know what your character's doing. There isn't much to dislike here. I really do still wish I would like to play retail, but retail has a lot of work to do. And my biggest fear is, as many have said, my biggest fear is that Blizzard might, and this is my biggest fear, this is like being ultra pessimistic about things, is Blizzard might look at what's happening here and say, right, we can go, all the really hardcore guys who like RPGs like heavily, they'll go to Classic, right? And that means for the guys who stay with BFA and stay with whatever Blizzard's current plan is for retail, is that they will make that ever more casual and mobile phone game friendly. Because a lot of stuff in retail is ripped from mobile phone games at this point. And we've looked at the 8.2 zones, and again, you're God in those zones. As soon as you arrive, you're eradicating everything in sight. Like, the limitations are artificially enforced by gating. There's nothing stopping you from just wiping out the entire fucking zone when you go to Najatar or to Mechagon. You can just destroy everything in sight. And I can't do that in Arathi Highlands. One day I'll be able to, but it's going to be a while. But I can't do that in Classic. It's just not the case. I turn up in an area, a new area, like the new zones would be, and in Classic it'll be places like Lights Hope Chapel and stuff like that. And it's like, you're not winning there. You're going to get your ass kicked. You've got to be careful. You've got to play out. And that adds so much to it. It really does. But they might make live a bit more casual friendly, because they'll push the guys who like the RPG stuff over towards Classic. And it will divide the player base, undoubtedly. This isn't going to be for everybody. For the people who've joined and really like being God, for the people who've started playing WoW in the later years and they like being God, they like being the master of their the master of everything. They like not failing, right? Because as I said, you really do have to go out of your way to bump into difficulty in retail. You have to go out of your way to do that. And those guys will, maybe some of them, I mean, there's always going to be some crossover, but some people will just go to Classic and be like, this sucks. This really sucks. Because they're going to look at it through the eyes of a retail WoW player, where it makes no sense that a wolf can kill you, right? This doesn't make sense. I just was eradicating a camp full of Naga just 10 seconds ago. Why am I dying to a wolf now? What is this game? People will have that mentality, and for them it won't work. But there'll be some players who are like, oh, I get it. I get it. I get it. And that divide's going to be interesting to see how it plays out going forward. But here we are. Right now, I'll play Classic every single day and leave retail to raiding with the guys, because I still love that. That's still fun. But at the moment, Classic's just a better video game, in my opinion. And that's my summary on it. It's a better video game. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.